Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your doom. I'm your host, the Doom Runner. It really is funny that the runner part is the thing that really fits for a nickname, isn't it? It's not like I'm the lore Doom or the lore, the lore cheater or whatever. No, it's always cheat runner or Doom runner or whatever. The Furt runner, I heard someone use that one once because they were hopefully being facetious. And now I wait for anybody to show up. Are we live? I can't even tell if we're live. Oh, Jason Bauer's there, so I'm going to assume, given the circumstances, that we are in fact live. Hopefully. Nope, I need music. Hang on. There we go. Oh, I feel so much better. Music. Silence just bugs me. It has since I was young. Ever since, when I was really young, I used to have this little micro recorder that I just kind of put there, and I'd record music off the TV. I think I've mentioned this before. And I'd sit down and I'd hit play, and I'd just fall asleep with the music playing and run out the batteries really quickly, of course. But, what are you going to do? I'm totally not okay with that, Tesla, especially since I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. Hello. Oh my god, I'm going to terribly mispronounce his name. See, what I see is Ali Al-Muhanna is what I'm seeing there, and I'm probably saying that incredibly wrong. But nevertheless, you're more than welcome, even though I'm terrible at pronunciations, I swear. DS9 Season 1 Episode 2 is the second half of Emissary, Munch DK. I am going by the official numbering system that they use for their actual records keeping, and the ones that are on the DVDs. Well, all of those points that they raised, Tesla, sound incredibly facetious at best and outright stupid at worst. So that's my opinion on that, Tesla. Now, before we actually start, I do have something I want to say. I like to have a little section here before we get to the spoilers. Oh, by the way, we do have a vote going on. I like to have a little section before we get to spoilers. And I'll put up a thing when we actually get to spoilers, so no worries. So right now we're in the non-spoilers for Justice League time. So everyone just chill on spoilers and chat for a second. I want to say that I want movie review critics to stop existing. I don't mean I want them to die. I mean I want the job to be removed from reality. Because, and this is something I've actually talked about before, movie critics have their own little political infrastructure. I hate to even call it an industry. And it's this own little thing that kind of works over there and has its own rules and all that. For example, it's one of the reasons why, this is a related reason to the fact that the Oscars is more political than it is actually about giving awards to good movies, right? I mean, we've known this for years and years and years. So, it's all about the political perspective. I have seen so few, in fact, actually at this point I would say I have seen zero professional movie critics. There were a few, but they've kind of fallen off the map. Zero professional critics, movie critics, who have legitimate opinions about movies and actually review a movie rather than, say, this is great because I have to say this, because I have to stay in, I have to be in with whatever's going on right now. Or I say this is bad because I have to be in with whatever's going right now. It's a click. It's a frickin' click. And it actually used to frustrate the hell out of me. It really did. Because I'd see people, and I've actually talked about this again before on my stream and on my show, where I'd see a movie and I'm like, oh wow, that was really good, it did this and this and this, and the critics just bashed it. Or the inverse, critics are like, oh my god, this is a media darling movie, oh my god, it's so incredible, and then I watched it and it was just disinteresting or boring or bad. I'm going to spoil everything, Tesla, that's how this works. It's in the title and everything. We're not in the spoiler section yet, though. So I look at this whole political clique thing with the movie critics, and I look at that and I say, why are you still here? Like, who's still paying you to waste everyone's time with your not opinions? And that's really the key thing for me. I don't care if you disagree with me. God's sakes, you know how many people I know who disagree with me? I was talking to people who disagree with me last night. We were having disagreements about the movie we saw, me and my friends and family who saw that movie together. That's fine, if you actually mean that. But movie critics don't, again, I am generalizing, but professional movie critics, I have never seen one who actually has an honest-to-God opinion within the recent years. There used to be some, But it's all about the, okay, what am I supposed to say? And it's funny because I kind of understand that in a weird way. Like, I understand the... For example, I'll use yesterday as an example. I was playing Battlefront 2. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. When I went into that, I'm like, oh, God, you know, everyone's going to hate this game. And if I say anything positive about it, I'm going to get roasted for this. People are going to hate me if I speak positively about Battlefront 2 EA, because so many people hated the way they were dealing with the DLC and the microtransactions and the bullcrap gambler pay-to-win garbage. So, you know, it was upon... I felt that pressure, or whatever you want to call it, to do that. And I had to, like, as I was starting this stream, I'm like, okay, I need to take a moment and just not do that, because it's expected of me. You know, so I understand the pressure of it. I do get that. I understand the impetus for that, but it doesn't mean that those people, that type of industry is relevant, especially in a day and era in which we have anybody with a YouTube. I'm basically going to be giving my own review of the movie in the next few hours. I'm just a little fish. You know, we don't really need professional movie critics anymore. They only exist because they're basically part, and I know this is going to sound weird, but they are part of a pseudo-aristocracy of the film industry. Along, you know, again, I point to the Oscars as a fantastic example of what I'm talking about. So, I just wanted to get that off my chest, because I have been actually avoiding spoilers for Justice League almost universally. I had one thing spoiled for me, and it actually pissed me off. It was a spoiler in the title of an article, so one of those spoilers you can't avoid. And that, God, that's just bullcrap when someone pulls that kind of stuff. I mean, it's one of those things that makes me filled with a lot of fear. Thank you, Sarah Hunter, very much, as ever. Those Twitch Prime subs are hugely, hugely appreciated. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, I was trying to really avoid spoilers for the film. Saw the film, went home, went to bed. It was like midnight. And I'm like, ugh. I usually go to bed at like 9 or 8 sometimes. So I wake up this morning, and first thing I do is I always have this morning routine thing, and one of the things I do is I look up news of what happened overnight and stuff like that. And so I started looking into professional reviews and what review sites were saying about this movie. About the fear. I was wondering what they were saying about the fear. God, I've failed at pronouncing this name before. Hang on. Melcinitin is what I want to say, but nevertheless, even though I'm absolutely butchering your name, thank you very much, sir, and or madam, for the sub. Although I don't ask for those subs. I have no idea why there's so much fear today. So what the hell was I saying? And every review site was just bashing the film, and I mean bashing. I mean, people talking about how the film was eye-rolling and just face-palmingly bad, and it was so horrible it's not worth seeing, even on DVD, and I don't know what they were thinking with this, and it's clear they had no idea what they're doing. Oh, and also it's all Joss Whedon's fault. You know, it's just people bashing the film over and over and over, and I'm just sitting here like, what is wrong with you people? And of course I know why they're doing it. It's because that's what's in vogue right now. You're supposed to bash the film. The first few professional critics were like, haha, bash, bash, bash. And everyone else said, well, I have to do that because I can't be ostracized. I can't be pushed out of the clique. Pisses me off. Hi, Gary. Interesting. We'll have to try that out at some point. I am not popular, that is true. I'm very much not popular, and I am not mainstream. I am a tiny, dinky... Fear! Oh my god. Thank you, Bragwin. Is this just the time of month where everyone's things is running out? Is that just what this is? But yeah, God, I've lost my train of thought. I keep losing my train of thought when that happens. Right, I'm a tiny little speck. I know that. I understand that, you know. I am this dinky little speck in a tiny corner of an island of the internet. I am irrelevant. I understand that. I have no delusions of grandeur. Well, that's not true. I have ambition, and I have hopes, but I know where I am in my professional career. So, now that we've gotten all that off my chest, we're still in the no spoilers section. Let me just say, I liked the film. It was not as good as Wonder Woman, in my opinion. Wonder Woman had basically one significant problem with it, and I'm not going to spoil that in an unrelated film, but it's the climactic finale, the battle, the superhero battle at the end of Wonder Woman. I didn't like that. But the rest of Wonder Woman was great. I think this movie was overall less quality, but it was still very enjoyable. You can ask my sister or Third or Kazra. We were laughing a lot, and it was just, oh my god, this is great. And you know, there were a lot of moments where I was just like, yes. And me and sister like high-fiving. I'm not actually kidding. There's a lot of really great moments in this film. I would say that its plot is very weak. In fact, its plot is basically an excuse. But it's a very heavy character piece. A lot of character scenes, a lot of character emphasis, and they did a great job with multiple characters involved. And that's all I'm going to say in the no spoilers section. That's all I'm going to say right here. Take that or leave it for what it's worth. Now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the spoilers tag. This is your big warning. Everyone knows what Rosebud is. Make sure you vote, by the way, because that's something I want to know in the future. Make sure you go vote on that. So now I'm giving everyone a few more seconds to stream out or close the VOD if you're watching this on the VOD or on YouTube. So this is your spoiler warning for JLU. This is your big spoiler warning. Spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning. I like that, SJ. Link to vote. It's right above you. It was his sled. You know what's funny? If I could, just to give people like another minute or so. Hang on. Don't spoil just yet. Just to give people like a minute or so. You know what I like about this spoiler? This spoiler doesn't spoil Citizen Kane. Now, I know most of you probably haven't actually seen Citizen Kane, and there's nothing wrong with that. Holy crap. Damn it, and I don't know how to pronounce your name. I feel terrible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Milsiniton? That's what I keep wanting to say. You didn't respond earlier, or at least I missed it if you did. Thank you, sir and or madam. That's not a fear, that's an awesome is what that is. Thank you. Citizen Kane. It's a character piece, and I mean, the spoiler, the plot of the movie is finding out what Rosebud is, and it's his sled. But that, like, knowing that in advance doesn't change the film. It's one of the rare, it's actually one of the reasons why I use this as my spoiler example. That's why I say it was his sled when I'm saying a spoiler, and it's why I have this picture, because this doesn't actually spoil the film. Even knowing this walking into it. I knew about this before I ever saw Citizen Kane. I knew about the sled thing before I ever sat down and watched it for the first time when I was pretty young. It didn't change. I still liked the movie. It has some issues. I don't think it's one of the best films ever, but I'm saying it right. Awesome. But yeah, so anyways, now that I just find that funny, but this is why I use that. Anyways, let's move on. Ladies and gentlemen, Superman comes back from the dead. Now, I wanted to basically drop that there because that is basically the only real spoiler in this film. Everything else is just a natural sequence of events or things that are developing as we go. And let me just go ahead and say that I have several problems with this film. I do. It's not a flawless film. Superman coming back is my biggest flaw with this film by a huge margin, and that's why I want to talk about it first. Because it's not even really a spoiler, as people in chat are already starting to say, because that's not a spoiler. Everyone knew Superman was going to come back, and that's part of the problem. First of all, you guys know me. I hate it when any fiction treats death as if it's cheap. I hate that crap. I went off for like 30 minutes on Threshold just about the fact that Tom Paris comes back from the dead. That's so stupid. If you're going to freaking kill off a character, make it mean something. Don't just be like, oh, they're dead, drama, oh no, they're back. It's cool, it's cool. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. And they clearly and demonstrably said that he was going to come back in the last film. They even set it up. It wasn't even a spoiler before this film came out. We knew he was coming back. So it's not so this isn't really a spoiler in the traditional sense of the word. So so I'm already against this idea. I'm already against this idea of Superman coming back from the dead. Then on top of that, the way they execute it was terrible. For those of you who haven't seen the film, let me just run through this. But for those of you who have, I want to see if you think the same way I do. Because it's like he comes back, then they have the forced fight between them, which was actually kind of cool. Yeah, exactly, Tezza. So forced fight, okay. That was a cool scene. I'll talk about that more later. Then, you know, they bring in the big guns. That was actually kind of awesome. And then he leaves. Now, what happens next is the team, the Justice League team, you know, in their darkest hour, having basically lost, because, you know, they lost Superman, is like, okay, this is a grim situation. Even though we don't have Supes, we need to go, and we need to go fight, God, I can barely remember his name, Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf. We need to go fight Steppenwolf. It doesn't matter if we don't have Supes. We need to do this. And they have this great banding together, and there's some great character scenes, and they all build themselves up, and they have this great teamwork thing, and Batman's the tank, and there's just all sorts of really cool stuff. And then, in between these awesome scenes, which would work great if it was just these scenes, we just suddenly cut over to Supes and Martha. It's like, hey, you brought me to the farm. Yeah, this is home. Uh-huh. What? And then we cut back to the awesome scenes of the Justice League and the character stuff and the building themselves up. And then we cut back to Supes standing in the field again. What? See, let me explain why this bothers me so much, because there's two reasons. Two big reasons. Number one, this... For the audience, this destroys any possible tension for the finale. Now, I know that in general, the good guys are going to win and the bad guys are going to lose. Duh. I mean, that's generally how most fiction goes. But then, it's hard, like, all of the scenes about the team manning up and working together and having real teamwork and actual coordination and the whole team, I had to keep using this word, I don't have a better word, the whole teamwork bits and the whole character interaction bits are all deflated because the whole time we're watching them man up to the plate, we know that Supes is just going to show up and win. And guess what happens? Towards the end, Supes shows in and wins. He even shows off while he's doing it. He doesn't just beat the crap out of Steppenwolf. First, he has to go show off with regards to Flash, which I'll talk about that slightly separate. That actually irritates me a little bit. And then he goes and he just... Yeah, the team scenes were awesome, exactly. But they were interspersing the team scenes with these scenes of Supes just kind of hanging out. And don't tell me he didn't have enough time. He had enough time to fly out there, first of all, and for her to get a phone call to Martha, and then for Martha to drive out there. And for them to be able to fly all the way out to not Chernobyl. And it just deflated so much of what should have been a great sequence of events. The second reason it pisses me off is because, in my opinion, Superman can be a great character. That is my opinion. And I don't mind the fact that he is ridiculously overpowered. I don't, as weird as that sounds. As long as you do something good with his character. And there have been comics, and occasionally, you know, the DCAU and stuff, which have done good stuff with Superman, the character, with Clark Kent, the character, right? But there's no character piece, there's no character bits for Supes in this movie. He's confused when he's rezzed, and that's actually kind of logical. And again, I'll talk about that scene a little bit later. And then he flies out there and wins. There's no character there. There's no relevance. He's just there and he wins. Now, I do want to say, the fight between him and the League was awesome. And him beating the crap out of Steppenwolf was actually also pretty awesome. So, think of that what you will. But from a narrative perspective, from the perspective of a writer, I look at this like, what are you doing? Why would you sabotage your own arc like this so badly? And it's even worse because they pretty much showcase directly that Superman is better than the entire League combined. Now, again, okay, fair enough, Superman is super ridiculously powerful. That's basically part of his character. You know, he is, to quote the actual writers, as strong as he needs to be. But that doesn't excuse you from basically using him as a wrecking ball. And yeah, Kevin's making some good points there about the old Reeve and the old Donner movies. Yeah, I like that. All right, so anyways, I just want to get that off my chest, the Superman thing. One moment, please. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of the film. Like I said, I did actually like this film. Some of the narrative construction had issues, like I just mentioned, and I feel like they criminally underused Superman. But Aquaman was awesome, Flash was awesome, Bats was awesome. You know, I am as surprised as anyone that I actually like Ben Affleck as Batman. Wonder Woman was awesome, of course she is. They even did some good stuff with Alfred. Cyborg was awesome. Stone. I actually don't know how to pronounce it. They did some good stuff with characters. Flash, so I want to talk about Flash first, if that's okay. Because me and the family and friends were talking about this as we were driving home. We were concerned, they were concerned, I wasn't too worried about this, that they were just going to turn Barry Allen into Peter Parker. Anybody who's seen Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm not going to spoil Spider-Man Homecoming, but the way Parker was in that film was awesome. It's actually my favorite portrayal of Peter Parker ever. And there was some concern that DC had basically seen that and was like, okay, let's do that for Barry Allen. But they didn't. He certainly kind of, it is Stone. Okay, not Sloan, sorry. They kept kind of slurring it in the film. They kind of leaned in that sort of awkwardy, direction a few times, but they did really good stuff with him. And my sister pointed this out because my sister actually does have some social anxiety problems and interconnecting, introversion problems. And she, basically the way he acted was exactly correct for someone who is a social introvert, who has social anxiety problems, who is someone who legitimately would like to interact with, because remember, an introvert does not mean they don't want friends. I know a lot of people don't understand that. An introvert means they have trouble and they are more internalized, and there's other things I'm not going to go into. And he played it basically perfectly. And I loved the way that he wasn't just awkward cute. He was that too. But there were so many scenes where he's just like, you could tell he's just trying. I've got friends now. And he gives the whole speech he gives about needing friends that he gives to Bruce, and the whole bit with him and Cyborg and Stone, excuse me, in the grave. That was just gold, absolutely gold in my opinion. The only complaint, and this is such a minor thing, this is the tiniest of nitpicks, my only complaint is, given that this is Bruce, and they have been portraying this Bruce as someone who plans way in advance for just about everything, pretty good portrayal of Batman overall, I would have loved it if every time they're down in the Batcave talking, there's like this, they should have just had this set, add additional table in the background, which is just covered in food. And every time the camera goes back in a direction where you could see that table of food, some of the food should be taken off of it. Don't call attention to it. Don't do anything. I just think that would have been great, because it would have been Bruce, paying attention to the whole thing, and it would have been kind of a payoff of that whole my blood sugar problem, because Flash has an extremely high, Barry has an extremely high metabolism. I just think that would have been a nice little touch. There were some good subtle touches in this film, and it's kind of weird that they missed out on the opportunity for that one. While we're talking about Flash, so yeah, there should have been just some lobsters in the background. In fact, they could have even called attention to it once as a gag. Have Bruce just kind of roam over to the table idly as they're discussing their plan, and he goes to pick up a lobster, and he looks down, and none of the lobster is there, and he just looks up at Barry and just rolls his eyes and goes back to talking. Just a little thing like that would have been a nice touch. Batman is fairly human and fairly realistic. In fact, one of the other things I like about this film is they kind of divvy up the Justice League. No, that was super cute, Ali. That was awesome. Is it Ali? Am I saying that right? I really want to get names right. Before I go more into Flash, Barry and his interactions with Victor, were great in general. I already mentioned the graveyard scene. But it's also kind of nice because the two of them are the freaks. Like, he even says that in the movie, you know, we're the accidents. But more than that, they're the newbies. Flash has never been a superhero before. He's just used his power for basically nothing. And Stone, Victor, he's brand new. He's just now getting a comprehension. Thank you, Ollie. Awesome. He's just getting his sentience going, right? His sentience and sapience going. The two of them are new. The two of them are freaks. And the two bond. And I wish I could have seen more of that. They only really had like 3 scenes in the whole film of the two really interacting. But all 3 of those were awesome. What, Tesla? What am I wrong about? Tesla's on crack, I think. Then we have, I think that's a different Flash, actually, Tesla, because I know the show Flash is a completely separate Flash, which I've already made my opinion clear on that one. Flash being afraid. Who said that? Yeah, Zephyr. I liked that. I liked that a lot. Because he's not a hero, because he's just some kid who happens to go really, really, really fast. And I love that. He's terrified. Guys, I mean, it's great that you're all ready to go to battle and all that stuff, but, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to deal with this. This is just a thing, you know. I don't know how to fight people. And then I love the fact that Bruce didn't talk down to him, wasn't snarky to him. Bruce was exactly the mentor figure he should be. I mean, Batman, let's be honest, Batman really is, in most of his presentations, the elder. He's just a guy, very smart, very, very strong, you know, he keeps himself in honed, and he's got the money, but he is the elder of superheroes in many ways, and I like that general portrayal of him in this film. So the way he approached him, save one person. Just get in there, get one person out, save that person. What do I do then? You'll know. You'll know. I'll take your word on it, Tesla, because they acted like he'd never done superhero stuff before, as I'm mentioning in the scene I'm talking about right now, where he's terrified of fighting anybody. In fact, he basically doesn't fight anybody in the movie. And I kind of like that. He was kind of a support figure. And he did it really well, because, and that's another reason I mentioned the teamwork thing over and over earlier, because their composite powers and skill sets actually really complemented each other really well. I really wish in the movie, but anyways, I already said that. So yeah, and then he goes in, zooms in, saves the guy. He's like, he just looks around for a second. He's like, I'll be right back. And he goes to save the next guy, and he goes to save the next guy, and he goes to save the next guy. And I like how they kind of paid off with that towards the end of the film, where they're trying to get the civilians out. And, you know, they're fighting Steppenwolf, and Flash is nothing. Like, Flash is absolutely nothing to Steppenwolf. So he's like, what do I do? And go get the civilians. Okay. And he's off. Takes off. Zoom. And then, of course, Superman has to completely show him up, because he's Superman. So someone mentioned, and this is a good time to bring this up, the race. Let's talk about the race, first of all. So Superman and Flash race in this film. The way the film is presented, it makes it pretty clear that Superman is actually faster than the Flash. And, I mean, I don't know what else to add to that. I've already kind of talked about that. But they did do one very good thing with how fast Superman is. Because, let's talk about really quickly the scene where all of them fight Superman. All of them fight Supes. And that was actually a pretty awesome scene. Even though Supes wins, he doesn't completely mop the floor with them. He does win. But so he's fighting Diana, and of course she can withstand him. She's pretty much the only one of that group who can really withstand Supes. And Aquaman's like, all right, I got this. I'll talk about Aquaman in a second. And Cyborg, of course, alien Chitauri tech, Apocalypse tech, he was pretty cool too. I'll get to them in a second. But all of that fight was actually pretty fun. But what I really liked about that fight was when Flash is like, okay, crap, I don't know what to do. I got to help out. So he starts going around Soups, and then everyone else is frozen because Flash is going ridiculously fast, and then Soup's eyes turn to look at Flash, and then the camera goes to Flash, who's looking at Soups, and then Soup's head turns to look at Flash, and then Flash's face goes because he's never seen anyone who can keep up with him before. And the idea that Soups can actually move that fast, it was done to good effect, is what I'm trying to say. And then Soups is like, all right. And then they have the Speed Force fight. They have this fight which probably took less than a second in real time. And I was telling my sis, I really wish we could see a version of this fight that everyone else is seeing, because it'd only be like a second. But as they're fighting in ridiculously fast speed in the Speed Force, and Flash is basically just trying to stay out of the way. Now, Flash was able to dodge his attack, so that's kind of nice. But just, yeah. I thought that was cool. I thought that was a neat thing that they did, rather than just, you know... Yes, Sonic was totally in the movie. He called himself Barry Allen. They keep changing their names. Now, it's worth noting that Barry Allen, specifically Barry Allen, because there's been like 5 Flashes, Barry Allen actually moved faster than time once, back in Crisis of Infinite Earths. So make of that what you will. Yes, it is the Speed Force. They were specifically using the Speed Force version of Flash in this one, which I think worked out pretty well. And I just want to give... I know I don't often talk about visual effects, but I want to give praise to the way they generally visualized Flash. Everyone else sees this lightning just going around, and he... when we actually see his perspective, everything just has this nice filter that isn't headache-inducing like some filters are, and just kind of gets you the impression of everyone being nice and frozen. I think they did a good job with that. And that's worth noting because some of the CGI was not great in this film. There were issues in production. We all know about that. Zack Snyder, which was terrible. Let's just make that clear. What happened to Zack Snyder was not good. Was terrible. That nobody should have to go through that. And Zack Snyder, you know, quit the movie industry and may never come back. And they were having issues with producing, and Whedon insisted on doing reshoots, which was not actually originally the plan. Long story short, some of the background CGI was placeholder stuff, even in the actual film. And it's visible in a couple of scenes, most notably the skies is the most obvious version of that. No, that's terrible, Tesla. Don't say that. Don't say that. That is not cool. Whatever opinion you have of the man's cinematic technique, what happened to him is not cool and should not happen to anyone. Let's talk about Stone. Let's talk about Victor. So I wish there was more of him. That's my biggest complaint about Cyborg, because every time he was on screen, it was awesome. And I want more of that. We are apparently getting a Cyborg movie, so that's cool. But, you know, the actor managed to add a simple humanity to someone who is questioning his humanity, a simple existentialism, but they didn't bang on it too much. I was actually worried about that. Instead, it pretty clearly he was someone who was reached out to, I should say, by Diana. She reached out to him and kind of encouraged him to try more and be more and do more, which helped to bring him more into the team. And again, we've got that kind of the newbies thing, and the reason, the whole... There's even this great bit. I wonder how many of you caught this. Right towards the end, after they defeat Steppenwolf, and they're doing the big pose. In the background, just barely, you could see Flash and Cyborg doing a fist bump. It was just this quiet thing. I almost didn't notice it at first. And it was great. I loved it. I loved it. And, yeah, and the way he acted around his dad, the way he was trying to learn about his abilities and powers. Again, I just wanted more. It was all good. I have no complaints about Cyborg, except for the fact that there wasn't more of him. Maybe we could have had him instead of Soups. I don't know. Okay, since apparently nobody knows this, Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide. And it caused some very serious, horrible traumatic depression in Zack Snyder, as it should, as it would in most people. And Zack Snyder tried to muscle through and couldn't, and had to quit. That is why I'm saying what happened to Zack Snyder is horrible and shouldn't happen to anyone. So, I'm sorry. Again, I'm not saying the man's a great director. I actually don't like his directing style at all. I actively do not enjoy his directing style. But what happened to him was not cool. And that's why I kind of dropped the hammer on that point earlier. Sorry. So anyways, yeah, his young daughter, by the way. So that's Cyborg. Again, I wish I had more to say about Cyborg. Let's talk about Aquaman. Now, let me go ahead and say that I can't think of the name. Mimosa, I want to say. I like that actor. I'm really biased because I enjoyed him a lot over in Momoa, excuse me, in Stargate Atlantis. I don't know how many of you have seen Stargate Atlantis. I don't know what else he's in, actually. I've seen him in other stuff. I just can't remember. But I like him in general. I kind of like the way he was presented here. He was a little bit of a bro, basically. But they did some good stuff with it, in my opinion. Oh, I don't watch Game of Thrones, so I wouldn't know that. I thought they did some good stuff with it. It's probably worth noting that overall, his best scene was when he was sitting on the lasso of truth. Lasso of truth. I actually really liked that. That was just great, as he's just sitting there being honest, because he's on the lasso. And, I'm kind of scared. I don't want to die. I have no idea what's doing. I want to find out more about the land. I want to find out more about the sea. And they get this whole impression. They did this the whole film, that he is young. That I don't just mean like the actor, because the actor's, I think, older than I am. But I mean, like, relative to everyone, he's young. And he's inexperienced. He has no idea what to do with himself. They hint at his backstory a little bit. The abandoned by his wife as a child for reasons they don't go into. It was a good overall origination thing for him, and we get the impression that this is just a man who has tremendous power and no idea what to do with it. He's I got nothing. He helps local fishermen because why not, basically. and he did have my man. Yeah, and he's like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I love that scene. I love that scene. Or abandoned by his mother. Sorry, not his wife. Abandoned by his mother as a child. Sorry, I'm misspeaking. I should have gotten a drink. I usually have a drink for these things. He was a total badass. I almost regret that, because I feel like part of the reason they made him a total badass is because Aquaman has been a surface joke for so long. Now, to explain a little bit, for those of you who aren't comic book fans, the idea that Aquaman is pathetic and a joke is something that's a joke for people who are not comic book fans. Probably people who saw the old Super Friends cartoon or whatever, right? But anybody who is actually a comic book fan knows that Aquaman is actually an incredible badass. He's actually one of the top tier overall heroes of the DC, and he was pretty awesome in the DCAU as well. If for those of you who remember that, yeah, exactly, the Super Friend. I had the right name. Yes, that was a pun intended. Although I do use the term surface and in-depth several times, so it kind of works both ways. But that's the surface joke, and so I feel like because they're worried that the popular because they make these films not just for comic book fans, they make these films to appeal to the general audience, and so I feel like part of the reason they made Aquaman incredibly badass was because of the fact that he's Aquaman, and for no other particular reason. In fact, I would be astonished if that wasn't something that was in the mind of the casting directors when they actually hired Momoa to do the role. You're fine, Narlix. That being said, Momoa is awesome and he was a badass. He did some good stuff. Probably my favorite bit overall is when I did not know that, Tesla, no. That's kind of cool. Probably my favorite moment for him overall is unfortunately the one from the trailer. And it's the one where it's more awesome with further context. Because in the trailer, we just see him riding on the Batmobile and being awesome. But that scene was so much better because it was part of the teamwork scenes I've referenced twice now. The scene where he was working together with bats to just wreck so many of the parademons as they were wrecking through that. Also, someone asked, is he part Atlantean or part human? Actually, we don't know. Like I said, they only touch on his origin story a little bit. We do know that his mother was full Atlantean and someone who was in dealing with all this thing. And we know that he was abandoned as a child, as I mentioned earlier. And that's kind of it. We also know that he's pretty young. He is reasonably new to this role. He also doesn't seem to actually have the throne. By all accounts, this is speculation, but based on how they present him, I don't think he actually had accepted the throne. I think that he was just doing his own thing. You know, he's a kid, like I said, and doesn't know what he's doing. And what's her face? I don't even remember her name. Is the one who probably was actually one sitting on the one who almost managed to push back Steppenwolf and failed at doing so. So, my opinion on that, again, that's pure speculation because they don't really cover it. Speaking of speculation and whatnot, did you notice that they mentioned Darkseid twice in this film? I noticed both occasions. I'm just amused at that. Which I suppose this is a good time as any to segue into talking about... Mara, thank you, Ali. This is a good time to segue into talking about Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is probably my second big complaint about this film, in my opinion, because he was... I'm trying to phrase this. From a purely literary perspective, he was bad. You know, from a perspective of a writer, from the perspective of a story, he was disinteresting and bad. They did present him reasonably well. I mean, what are you going to do with Steppenwolf, of all characters, right? And he was, you know, kind of a badass. They do some good things, and there were some scenes that actually had legitimately good tension. I'm going to go ahead and go to one specific scene. There's this one scene where he first beams down to the mother box. I'm not sure I like what they did with the mother boxes, but whatever. So he beams down to the oh my god, the Amazonian mother box, and they've got a dog pile of Amazonians on him, stabbing and trying to kill him, and he's just ugh! And she runs out. They smash down, you know, the things, and she gets out, and Sis and I both, as we're sitting there, we both just under our breath say, "Run," because the scene was actually legitimately tense. The way they presented it, it was a great fight scene. It was a great run scene, and then she gets up and gets on a horse and goes, and then within seconds he's already at the door, and that was awesome. The way they did that. And then him just, whoa, bam! And they even did some reasonably good directing points with him chasing and killing the Amazons as he goes after Hippolyta. I think it was Hippolyta, who has the mother box, one third of the mother boxes. And I love that. That whole thing was actually a pretty good establishing moment. Then, I mean, and then he's just kind of there from that point on. He shows up in Atlantis, underwater, wrecks Mera, takes the mother box, leaves, and then he has a few scenes where he speechifies about his goal. Now, I've heard some reviewers, who I'm just going to go ahead and call stupid, say that his motivations were not, as in he didn't have any motivation, and that he was someone they didn't understand. And that's why I call them stupid, because I thought it was pretty damn apparent what was going on. He even says flat out, he wants to become one of the new gods. Duh. I mean, anybody who knows the comics probably already guessed that motivation, but he says it in the movie. His goal is to become one of the new gods, and he's trying to use the mother box and this consumption of Earth as a way to elevate himself to that position. Duh. And there's this whole, how do I put it? They got a good actor, and there's a few tiny bits. It's hard to see because of the makeup and the CGI, but there was a few bits where you could tell this is a person who has, I'm going to try and phrase this as best as I can, who has no self-esteem. This is someone who is trying to prove himself. This is someone who has failed and is like, I can do this. And I think probably the best scene of his, excuse me, the second best scene of his is his final scene. Like, even before they said it in the movie, when he starts backing up as they start beating him, Sis and I both at the same time are like, he's afraid. And then in the movie, they flat out say, oh my God, he's afraid. And the parademons start going after him. And I just started laughing. And Sis is like, wait, why are they fighting him? And I turn to her and I say, they were never actually his parademons. And she's like, ooh. That being said, other than again, this is a case of I feel like he was misused as a character. I feel like they should have done more with him. I feel like they should have actually done something with this guy. But at the same time, from a movie making perspective, this is already a long film, and they already had to cover Cyborg's origin story. They had to cover Aquaman's origin story. They had to cover Flash's origin story, and they had to do the character moments in between everyone. You know, they had to do a whole bunch of time-consuming things for basically everyone. So I kind of get it. I'd just like to say that if they had chopped Superman out of the film, they could have done more with him. Just saying that. But anyways, I also would have loved it. This is just me, nitpick. I would have loved it if, as the beam comes down, you just hear this horrible, dead voice come out and be like, "You have failed me," or something simple like that, right? You have failed me. Don't actually explain it. Don't do anything else. We'll get it. We know who that is. We know who's coming. Sis had an idea like that, Bragwin. Her idea was, and I kind of like this idea, admittedly. So they try to res him with a mother box. And surprisingly not, we actually analyzed that afterwards in the car, and there's actually no plot holes with that particular construction of events. Weirdly enough, because it all does line up. But then they try to res him with the mother box. He gets up, he fights the League, he runs off. Right? Now imagine if he wasn't in the film at all until he shows up right at the end to go after Steppenwolf. IMO, that would have made a much more impact. We probably would have seen it coming anyways, but it wouldn't have actively detracted from the film like the in-between Superman scenes were. Just our opinion on that. Yeah, literal Deus Ex Machina. He just shows, all right, I win. Frickin' soups. Anyways. I don't know, Revan. I don't. Someone said earlier, I forget, I think it was Tesla. Someone said that they didn't like the idea that a Justice League thing has to have Superman. I agree. Justice League does not need Superman. I'm sorry. It doesn't. Carl Urban's Judge Dredd, in my opinion. Although I do find something enjoyable about Stallone's Judge Dredd. And yeah, this film. So I was going to Steppenwolf, right? So mother boxes. Let's talk about mother boxes. I only know of 3 overall presentations of mother boxes across the comics, and I don't know of any that quite fit this one. The way they portray this, it kind of sounds like they're going with the New God mother box. I'm not sure what I think of that. I am the law. Sorry. The way they present it in the film is, you know, New God, sentient sapience. Steppenwolf brought the mother box down and used it in order to try and do something he calls the Unity, which was to to Genesis device, to borrow from Star Trek, the planet, and then bring them all back under his total control. Again, part of Steppenwolf's ploy, his plan to become one of the new gods. That obviously failed. A combination army of the humans, Atlanteans, and Amazonians back in the day fought against him and managed to defeat him, push him back, take the mother boxes, and they split them up. One with the humans, one with the Amazonians, and one with the Atlanteans. By the way, how many of you cheered when you saw the Green Lantern fighting Steppenwolf in the past? No one? Okay, that's cool. I know there's Twitch lag. I have no idea how many else. We'll see what people say in a minute here. Fear. Thank you very much, Progressive Void, for the Twitch Prime subscription. As ever, those Twitch Prime subscriptions are hugely, hugely appreciated and appropriate. Thank you. No, not that Green Lantern. It was actually an alien. It wasn't a human, Tesla. I don't know what species he was. But he was part of the fight. He actually died in the fight against Steppenwolf. And after he dies, the ring pops off him and zooms off into the distance. And that's basically it. But it was good. Like they did a good bit with that. They even mentioned, we had people from other worlds helping us fight Steppenwolf, and that's all she says. And they showed there were a couple other things. Someone who looked a whole lot like oh god, I can't think of the character's name. He's got like Black Adam, is that it? Hang on, where's Google? Pull this up really quick. Because he was there too. Yeah, Black Adam, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. A guy who I was assuming is Black Adam, the guy with the lightning. That's my assumption. I'm not sure if it was someone else. And there was some other person I didn't actually recognize who they was doing there, or what they were doing with that. Either way, I thought that scene was actually pretty cool when they were going and fighting against Steppenwolf in the past and defeating him. There we go. Oh, you're right. Dwayne Johnson's playing the Rock, so maybe it wasn't Black Adam. Or maybe it was a predecessor to him? I don't know. It was a guy who was behaving as if he was Black Adam, but not played by Dwayne Johnson. Apparently, not Ratigan. I mean, it could have been Shazam? Maybe? I don't know. He didn't say Shazam, first of all. I know, none of them said anything. I'm just poking fun. They had someone. They had several people who were clearly other DC characters who would have been alive 5,000 years ago. Also, I'd just like to say, my opinion, I find the fact that the mother box... So the mother boxes are different, separated amongst the people, right? And then the mother boxes, which are sentient and sapient, stay quiet and don't open any boom tubes. They never call it that, thank God. Because it's a dumb name. For 5,000 years. And then the day Superman dies, they start activating and signaling out to Steppenwolf. Now, in the movie, they kind of imply that the reason behind that, and Steppenwolf himself says it, I see why you did this, was because, Soups is gone, so there's nothing that can stop them. One of my friends who was watching it with me had a slightly different interpretation of that. Their belief was that this was something that had caused a new era of despair, like in the whole world, and that is why they were primed to go ahead and come back and try again. And that was his take on that. I don't quite buy that. I mean, there's been some pretty despairing moments in human history. Even despairing moments that hit the whole world. We've already seen a movie about them. The Great War in Wonder Woman. Which was even being pushed by Ares, for God's sake. So, I mean, But, whatever. I'm willing to ignore it. They had to be stupid and 5,000 years ago and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. I've made my point there. I want to ask you guys something. Legit. I'm just going to stay quiet about my opinion here. What did you think of the scene, the private scene between Bruce and Diana when he's injured and hurt and literally has to pull his shoulder back into its socket? And Diana comes in and they just talk. What do you think about that scene? Really, dog? I'm sorry, I'll be right back. Tell me what you think of that scene while I'm letting the dog out. Yeah, I know, right, Ali? Well, it's funny because the beginning of the movie is all about how Superman's death has plunged the world into a state of despair. So whatever. You know, if you're going to have all your movies tie in together, DC, just pro tip. Make sure all your writers are on the same page. So I'm seeing some interesting thoughts here. I want to mention that almost every reviewer out there, again, I mentioned the reviews earlier this morning, we're talking about how it's a terrible scene, and oh my god, why are they having Diana get together with Bruce of all people? That's so stupid. It's so cringy. So those people are idiots and dumb and just going along with the normal opinion, because just about every reviewer I've seen has said the same thing about that. I liked that. I liked that because it could be seen as romantic, and it could be seen as the two old people. Remember, this Batman has been Batman for 20 years in lore as of this point. Bruce, in lore, is getting old. He's having trouble keeping up with this. That's actually part of his character throughout this film. It's pretty much the only real characterization he gets, is that he wants to retire, but he basically can't. He's just getting on in his years. And she, of course, has been doing this for like 100 years or whatever. And it's these two old veterans who are talking with each other. And I like that. I liked that. The two actors, first of all, had some really good chemistry. And second of all, the dialogue was nice and well presented. And I liked it. I liked the interaction between the two. What do you want from me? Now, I also find it amusing because both of them have kind of been through the same thing. Both of them are basically broken. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to talk about Diana in just a second, so let's leave that aside for a moment. But in this film, Bruce is clearly a broken man. We already know about what happened with Robin. We already know that he made a huge mistake and feels terrible about it after BVS. And this is someone who is literally willing to die if it means bringing Superman back. In fact, he actually makes this point flat out of saying, you know, when Diana confronts him and said he could have killed you, Bruce says, I would have made that trade. And that's Batman. Like, we all joke, and Batman's kind of multiple different memes, but when you really get down to the character, and when they really do good stuff with the character, that's Batman right there. I love that. It reminds me of one of my favorite moments in, I believe it's Kingdom Come, where Supes is trying to convince him to join him, and he gives this great speech about, now, for all our differences and for all our mistakes and for all our disagreements, you and I have always been true on one thing, that we do not want people to die. It's a great speech. You should read Kingdom Come if you haven't. Anyways. Also, I'm kind of hesitant now, while we're on the subject, about the Batman movie, since Ben Affleck has pulled away from directing on that. I don't actually like Ben Affleck that much as an actor, but I like him a lot more as a director, and that's worrisome. But anyways, I digress. And yeah, he was very reliant on his gadgets. And I mentioned the teamwork scene, and I really like the teamwork scene. I've said this like 4 times now. But what I love most about it, and I started just laughing, and Sis and I were like, oh my god, this is great, and high-fiving each other, because Batman was the tank. No, I don't mean the fact that he was in a tank. I mean from an RPG, from an MMO. He was the tank. When they had the team going up against, you know, the army of parademons and Steppenwolf out there, who was the one who distracted them and brought their attention and focused it? It was frickin' Bats. The normal human, well, I shouldn't say normal, the guy with no superpowers. Functionally, Flash would actually be the healer here. He's support. Flash was support, and he did a really good job of that, as I mentioned earlier. And I love that. I'm sorry. I thought that was just great, that dynamic. And, of course, then the team backs him up, and like a good tank, Bats then basically directs people, directs the enemy into his people so they can take him down. And one of the things I like, as weird as this may sound, is the movie went out of its way to demonstrate that Aquaman, Cyborg, and Diana were all heavies, as I like to call it. They're all heavies. Boom, you know. They're the ones who will be the ones pulling most of the weight. No, Diana is not the tank. Diana's the heavy. She's the one with the Gatling gun in the back there, just unloading on the enemy, to use the parallel there. She's the damage. She's the one who was primarily fighting Steppenwolf. She was pretty much soloing Steppenwolf for a while. In fact, if I could be so bold, I would say that's, in my opinion, I think Diana could solo Steppenwolf under ideal circumstances. My opinion on that. Even the movie versions, especially in the comics, she would wreck him in the comics. And I loved that presentation, but I know this is in the trailer, but it is a good line. You know, they're getting into the car, and then Barry Allen turns to him and says, "What's your superpower?" And Ben Affleck turns to him and with no sarcasm and no quipping just says very bluntly and honestly, "I'm rich." But it sounds like a joke, but if you think about it, a good team needs that kind of character, the kind of person who could provide infrastructure and contacts and technology and information, you know, usually referred to as the guy in the chair. Oh, you know what? I actually didn't bring up the bank scene. The bank scene was great. Oh, that was so cool. It's also contradictory from a narrative perspective, and I guess this is a good time to segue into talking about how they did Diana. I legitimately feel this film had multiple writers who couldn't agree with each other, and I really do feel that. Oh, I agree. Bruce is more than just rich. He's got that human determination thing going for him. I didn't catch any Easter eggs myself, other than the ones I've already commented on. So let's talk about the bad first. Let's just get that out of the way. So Diana, after her movie, you know, goes through this whole arc of how she's going to, you know, fight and be a beacon for people, because human have good in them, right? But then, by all accounts, she goes into a hole and hides and does nothing for, 60 years or something like that in lore? And they even Bruce calls her out on that. Bruce says, "Why did you go?" And she admits that she went and hid on that. But we see the bank scene where she goes and does that, and there's no, like, connection to the main plot. This is just some random terrorists who have nothing to do with anything, and she just shows up and is like, "Hey, let's deal with this. We got this." And she beats them, and it's an awesome, awesome, awesome scene, but it's kind of contradictory to the whole idea of her hiding and not doing anything, and not being a hero, and not being a symbol to humanity, which is mentioned in Wonder Woman and in this film. So I really legitimately feel that some of the it was either multiple writers or the writer forgot what they were doing with her, and so portrayed her in this dualistic fashion rather than cohesing on it. You know, I feel like the bank scene was done to show off how awesome she is, rather than as a narrative point. Now, that being said, that bank scene was an awesome scene. Let's make that clear. That was great. For a little bit of construction, and this is great because it helps to show her strengths. It's a bunch of terrorists who show up, and they're just terrorists. They're just here to blow up things, to make a statement about humankind needs to die, and blah, blah. They're dumb idiots, okay? Moving on. They're dumb terrorists. There's no characterization there. They're stupid evil. And so they open this bomb, and the bomb has a 20-second timer, and they're all willing to die for this. So that actually kind of makes sense. I'm with that. Cool. 20 seconds. She runs in, grabs it, throws it as high into the air as she can, so that people aren't going to be injured by the bomb. Then the guy pulls out, like, what looks like an M4 carbine or something like that. It's just like, I'm going to just shoot these guys in the face. And then she goes, and because she's frickin' Diana, block, 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 blocks every single shot from a fully automatic machine gun. And then he's like, you know? Darth Malik's walking to a bank. It kind of was. There's no droids involved. No droids, just guns, and they shot a lot of people, too. That whole scene was kind of unpleasant, actually. But anyways. But so, her... That was great. That was great. And it helps to, once again, showcase how Diana is the frickin' heavy. How she can do that kind of crap. And she was fast enough to do that kind of crap. Which means we have 3 very fast characters in our movie now. Yeah, no droids, only parademons. But Now, if I was to get involved in this writing, if I was to apologize for this film, which I'm not willing to do, but if I was to sit down and try to apologize for what's going on, I think what they were trying to do is showcase that she would go out and help people and then skirt away into the night and not, like, tell anyone who she is or stay around or anything like that. But I'm sorry, but in a world like DC, like the way they've presented it even in the films, this one woman who is seen by people who are probably giving live accounts of this person who saved their life. There's going to be news stories and ideas and concepts of that rotating around there, and there's no hint of that anywhere. In fact, if you remember, it was a big deal that Bruce, excuse me, actually that's not true, Luthor, and then Bruce, piggybacking off of Luthor, was able to find out about her at all. So, inconsistent writing. Whatever, moving on. That's true, Cyborg. God damn, everyone's fast. I'm sorry, Flash. I'm so sorry. Now, that being said, like I said, there were several scenes with Diana that I did very much like. Obviously, you know, her blocking all the bullets, like I just mentioned. Her talking with Bruce. What do you mean, Zunkadar? Oh, because Flash is still young. Actually, yes. There's a really brief scene towards the end where they show Flash, and I'm like, oh, and Sis is like, what? He was trying to go faster. He was trying to get better at it, because one of Barry Allen's character arcs, one of his 2 character arcs, is that he has, they say it flat out, so it's a little obvious, but, you know, he's been spinning his wheels. He hasn't been doing anything. He's just been, and that's kind of true. Like, the presentation of this Barry Allen is someone who has no real motivation to do anything. So he just kind of, I mean, he uses his superpowers to draw squiggly lines on a guy, you know, I mean, what? But by the end of the movie, it makes it more clear that he's now trying to actually be a part of something and actually do something. So, it's actually entirely feasible that Barry Allen will get faster and maybe outrun time, you know, maybe save the multiverse, who knows. Is that everyone? Hang on. I'm trying to think. So we talked about Bruce, Diana, Steppenwolf. Question. Why was Lois Lane in this film? Can anyone give me a legitimately good answer to that question? I mean, no offense to the actress, although I don't think she's that great of an actress. But why is she in this film? Because Superman. Yep, okay. If that's the only answer to that question, I suppose you understand why I'm making a little bit of a fuss about this. I'm okay with you having a character. And I know everyone wants to do the big, strong female character right now because that's what's in vogue at the moment in the cultural society we live in. But if her only purpose in existing is to be the support for Supes, who I don't think should have even been in this film. And what really irritates me, if I could just be so bold, is that Lois Lane has actually been awesome many times in the comics and in the show. I mean, why not, if you're gonna have her be there, why not do that? Why not go ahead and have her be this? I mean, one of the things they actually did pretty decently in Batman vs. Superman was Lois Lane was able to figure out what the hell was going on with Luthor, right? That was actually... Forgive me for speaking well of Batman vs. Superman. Lord knows I have been bashed to hell for that opinion, and I don't care, because it's the truth. But they did a good job with her character in Batman vs. Superman. They did a decent job of having her be relevant for the story, and actually have a skill that was actually useful, because she is a skilled reporter. They even mentioned that in this film. But instead, she's got, like, hang on, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 scenes in this film? 4, right? Why is she even here? And I know, Amy Adams' name on the poster and blah, blah, blah. I get the real, I understand and know the real reasons. Yes, I have, Ali. It should be on my my Lore Runner archives, I'm pretty sure. You check both my channels. It's on there somewhere. But I have done a discussion stream just like this about that film. But yeah, it's just kind of shoved in there, and it doesn't have anything to do narratively with anything other than the slight thematic connection of despair. Yeah, exactly, Zephyr Rose. This is always my philosophy when it comes to writing. If you're forced to have a character, or you're forced to have an actor or an actress or whatever in your film, do something with them. Don't just put them in a couple of scenes on the side so you can say that Amy Adams is in your film, or so you can say you have a strong female character in the film, or you could say that the contract is being fulfilled, or whatever. Do something with her. Anyways. Who's gonna catch the Spider-Man video photos? Gosh, I'm trying to think who else is in this film. I don't actually know if I have much else to talk about. Anyone else have something they want to mention? I'm trying to think here. I want to give praise again to the special effects, specifically for the powers and the fights, because they did some good stuff with that. Like I already mentioned with the Speed Force, that was great. But the special effects for just about everyone's powers was good. The music was generic action film. Not in a bad way, but it was what I like to call wallpaper music, the kind of thing you don't really notice. Oh yeah, I actually did want to talk about the end credit scene. Commissioner Gordon. God, what a waste of a great actor. I'm sorry. Gordon was actually good. Like, there's even a scene which made me go, yeah! When Jeff Gordon, some detective shows up and they're like, here, the people have been kidnapped by someone they claim looks like some kind of flying demon or bat. You know what that looks like? And Jeff Gordon, with the seasoned tone of an elder veteran, says, do you really think that he spent 20 years fighting crime in Gotham and suddenly started to kidnap 8 civilians in Metropolis? And the way he says that is just perfect. It's basically him just slamming down on the guy on how stupid that is. And he doesn't even say it overtly. It's just, really, dude? Really? I loved that. That was great. Yeah, Gordon was reasonable. Again, more. You know, I would have loved more of that. Apparently he's going to be in the Batman film. We'll see what happens with that one. The cinematography. A lot of scenes were obviously Zack Snyder. I don't actually know what else to say about that. A lot of scenes were very... There's a proper term for that style of directing and editing. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But... So, this is related to Tesla's question. Were the reshoots apparent? It felt like... The directing... It did feel like there were 2 directors. Because it legitimately felt like the action scenes had one director, and the character scenes had another director. For the most part, I thought the character scenes were directed quite well in terms of camera angle, in terms of lighting, in terms of how they were presenting it. You know, just generally good stuff there. And, you know, I'm not going to go into every tiny detail, but, you know, as part of this job, I've started noticing directing a lot more. And it was kind of obvious that they were trying to do little things to present the characters in just such a way. The action scenes were okay. I mean, they were nice, fun action scenes. And you know what? I will give credit where credit is due. They didn't do the 2 things that piss me off most about action sequence editing. And I bet you guys can tell exactly what I'm going to say before I even say it, but I'll just say it really quick. They didn't do shaky cam. Oh my god! That legitimately gives me a headache. My whole desk is shaking now. Hang on. There we go. They didn't do shaky cam, or if they did, I didn't even notice it. And they didn't do chop 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 in terms of editing. I hate to use, this is going to be a weird example of this, but Taken 2 with Liam Neeson is probably one of the worst examples I've ever seen in my life of choppy editing. Yeah, Liam Neeson climbing a set. You know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. There's several scenes in Taken 2 which do this, but the worst one by far is when Liam Neeson climbs a fence, and I think it's 6 edits. To explain what I mean, it's like, you know, you've got 20 seconds of footage, so you chop out these seconds, shove it over, chop over, chop over. So it's now like 8 seconds, and there's chop, 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 chop. In the world. And I hate that crap. God, I hate that crap. I hate it when people do chop, 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 chop. I understand why some people do it. I understand the mentality behind that type of editing and the type of directing. I just absolutely despise it. I'll be right back. I think it's the dog. Anyways, but damn it, James Carmichael. But yeah, I do have to give praise for the fact that this film, despite its, I shouldn't even say despite its action scenes didn't have those two things that piss me off in usual action films. Now, let's talk really quick about the mid-credits and the end-credit scene. So the mid-credit scene was just kind of a little, hey, you guys out there, you're comic book fans, right? We're cool, right? We're cool? Because, hey, Hourglass. Sunshine. Oh yeah, I had a good audience. I laughed more, me and Sis laughed more than most of the audience, but we had a good reactive audience. That probably helped my enjoyment of the film overall. Intercuts, thank you. I knew there was a proper term for that. The mid-credit scene, for those of you not aware, who haven't seen the film, obviously, was... So it goes to, like, this road in the middle of nowhere, and Soups is there, and Barry is there, and they're like, okay, so let's race. And they're like, okay, and it's a great little character piece, too, because Soups is like... Soups, the whole way he presents himself, Henry Cavill, I think, is the actor, the way he presents himself the whole film, for the most part, is the guy who is incredibly sure of himself, which doesn't quite gel with previous presentations, but... I personally like more than the way he was portrayed in Man of Steel and BVS. I prefer the Soups, who is The Rock, because that's kind of what he's supposed to be. So he's just calm and collected, and Barry is, of course, really, really nervous because he's about to race Superman. He's like, okay, so what are we going to do here? And then, thank you, Revan. And then Soups says, all right, so if I win, you've got to take us to brunch. And, that's hurtful. That's a betrayal, man. Because they had the earlier whole diatribe about brunch. Why do you stand around in an hour just to go and have lunch? I mean, what's the point of that? I don't get people. They're kind of slow. I love that scene, by the way. Barry was great. Yeah, he has a terrible sense of direction too. It's title Hourglass and the Rosebud. But then Flash, of course, they do the race, and of course they don't say who wins. That's not the point. The whole point is the wink and the nod to the actual Flash and Superman race that happened. Oh, that was in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And but what I also like that little thing, you know. I've always wanted to see the Pacific. Because that's the finish line, hitting the coast. And it's implied they're in Kansas, so that was nice. Hang on, Tesla. Let me get back to that question. So I liked that. I liked that bit. Now, the end credits scene was something that was actually kind of awesome, in my opinion. Now, first of all, let me just go ahead and say I'm not actually a big fan of Deathstroke. I prefer Deadpool. I don't remember which one came first. We were actually talking about that. I couldn't remember which one actually came first. But I do like Deadpool, but I don't actually like Deathstroke. The way he was presented there was decent, even though he was literally in one scene, in the end credit scene. I wonder if he's going to be as insanely evil as he was in several representations of him. This was not Will Smith, by the way. I'm pretty sure it's Deathstroke. God, I'm 90% certain. Let me double check that really quick. Let me make sure I'm talking about the right guy. Just super quick. Deathstroke. Yep, nope, that's him. Shut up. That's him. I'm right. Okay. Apparently not, Tesla. So, Deathstroke, Will Smith with Deadshot. Okay, we're cool. He comes on. He looks pretty terrifying. And what's funny is he threatens Luthor. And Luthor just acknowledges the threat and said, no, don't worry. I'm not. I like living way too much to threaten you, to waste your time. And Luthor basically says, we need a league of our own, don't we? And that's the end credits scene. Now, one thing I found funny about that is Sis was like, why did Luthor get out? And I said, that actually is one of the few things that makes a super amount of sense to me. And she's like, why? Let me explain this really simply. Let's assume that you are the leader of the United States, or you're a leader of a country, or whatever, okay? And you want to keep Bob in prison. It's really important to you. You understand how much of a threat he is, right? But you're not the one keeping him in prison. There's people below you who are sending out orders, who are sending out orders to them, who are sending out orders to them. You get where I'm going with this? All that Luthor needs to get out of that prison, all that he needs to get out of that prison, is someone along the line who doesn't care about him being in prison. That's all he cares about. And Luthor still has tons of money and influence, and the backing of the Luthor Empire. Anyways. Yeah, exactly, Andrew. That is literally the actual textbook definition of financial corruption, is when someone down the line doesn't care about whatever you're doing and why. So anyways, so Luthor's out on his boat and he brings in Deathstroke and they talk and he's like, I'm ready to build the League of Evil. I don't know, Tesla. Although, for the record, I liked President Luthor in both the DCAU and the comics. I thought they did some good stuff with that. I'm thinking what they want to do is they want to have each of the upcoming movies. We've got the Cyborg movie, we've got the Flash movie, we've got the Aquaman movie, and we've got the Batman movie. And those are the only ones I know about confirmed as of right now that they're already working on. And those, what I'm guessing they're going to do, based on how they've been presenting this in the whole, we got to catch up to the Avengers thing, is that they're going to have one member of Luthor's League be either the main villain or the secondary villain in each of those films, and then they'll do another together film where they fight the whole League together. So comic book stuff I wanted to see. I wanted to see Batman die. I wanted to see Superman die. I wanted to see... I'm not evil, I swear. But, obviously, again, I really wish that Supes had stayed dead. That's my biggest complaint by far. Comic book stuff I wanted to see. So I have to admit, I've never liked Darkseid, because that's how I pronounce it. They say Darkseid. That actually aggravated me. Darkseid. Whatever, I'll try to say Darkseid, even though it's dumb. I've never liked Darkseid as a character. Like, I think he's been well presented as a character, like, twice. Once when he was fighting Galactus, that was cool. That was actually pretty well done. Pax introduced me to that comic. So once we know he's fighting Galactus, and once in the DCAU, the World of Cardboard speech, right? That's kind of it. He's dumb, and he's dorky looking, and he's an arrogant snot, and he's basically has an I win button that he just presses every now and again. I actively dislike him as a character. So the fact that they're already kind of building up to Darkseid as the major villain is something that just kind of makes me go, ugh. But they are. They've already been building up to it. They've already been doing a... No, Galactus is... Actually, I don't know what... did I say... Which one's the one who eats worlds? I'm pretty sure it's Galactus. Either way, there has been a comic. You can look it up. There's a comic where Galactus fight. So it is Marvel. Okay. There's a comic where Galactus and Darkseid fight, and it is actually a legitimately good comic. This toast, when I eat this toast, I understand its filling substance of great, perfectly flaked perfection. Anyways, so yeah, they're clearly building up Darkseid. I'm never letting that go as the main villain of the DCMU. Is what they're going with that. And again, I'm not sure what I think of that. Like, on the one hand, it makes sense because DC doesn't have that many super mega huge bad guys that are on a scale that can contest everyone. Darkseid is one of the big ones. He's arguably the biggest one. I'm not even sure who else they could use other than temporary villains like Extant or Parallax before he was turned into a bug, or the Anti-Monitor, which honestly, the Anti-Monitor is actually even dumber than him, so, let's not go with that. Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of decent villains in DC, but not a lot of really huge scale villains. Brainiac, certain Brainiacs, I'll agree with that. Certain of the Brainiacs are large-scale villains, as Injustice 2 showed us. That's a good example of that. But getting to my point, and you guys have already kind of made my point for me, but I want to say it out loud. I would rather have a bad guy team in the DCMU than Thanos 2.0. Just my opinion. Not just because I don't want them to replicate the damn frickin' MCU we've already got going on. See, I like that idea, Marluxia. I like that idea. A new bad guy? That's insane! That's ridiculous! Also, at this point, almost any bad guy you come up with is going to be seen as this person, except with a different name, because there are so many bad guys in the DC universe, in the DC comics, that pretty much whatever you come up with has probably already been done. And I guarantee you people will be like, oh, it's blah, 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 but with a different name, But I do agree. I think they should go in a completely different direction from the MCU. I know that the MCU works. I mean, we just talked about Thor Ragnarok. I'm not going to spoil anything about that film, but I did think it was a great film. But I really think the DCMU is being hampered by its insistence on bullet point syndroming the MCU. No, but Calendar Man can. Yes, Tom Hardy is doing Venom in the upcoming Venom movie. Which is hysterical, by the way, that Tom Hardy has played Bane and Venom. Like, there's, multiple ways in which that's funny to me. I have something on my glasses. That's true, Tesla. They actually did a good job of making Calendar Man actually terrifying. Yeah, I know, right, guys? It's Venom, Bane. Pop quiz. What's the juice that Bane uses to pump himself up? Anyways, so anyways, I'm done. So, gosh, I'm not sure I have anything else to talk about. Anyone else got anything else? Yes. Tom Hardy plays Popeye. I would love that. If just Tom Hardy's like, I'm not sure of anything else to share. Hang on, let me actually. Well, no. I'll just run through the film in my head really quick. One thing I did want to mention, we already kind of mentioned this briefly, but it really did feel like this should have been 2 films, my opinion. It was very rushed. It didn't detract from the film, in my opinion, but I wanted the film to take more time on certain elements. Like I mentioned, I wanted more Cyborg. I wanted more Barry Allen. I wanted more Gordon. Just racing through these scenes because they were squishing it into a single film. Yeah, Henry Cavill, I think I'm getting the right name there, who plays Soups, actually had a mustache and pretty much refused to shave it for the film, so they CGI'd his mustache out. Now, I gotta be honest, I didn't actually notice that. Damn, man. Yeah, pretty much, Bartman. I mean, we're up to, like, what, 22 main characters in the Infinity Wars now, as of now. Did I like Superman's mustache? Yeah, they had reshoots, which Joss Whedon insisted on. I mentioned that earlier. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Doom. Sorry. Oh, what did my moviegoers not like about the movie that I disagreed with? There was something, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something that bothered them that didn't bother me, and I'm trying to remember what the hell it was. Hey, Takoda. Thank you, Magister. I can't actually remember it. It was something pretty minor. No, it wasn't the characters. It was nothing about the characters. We were pretty in unison on that. Oh! Well, no, I already talked about that. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I can't think. It was something really minor, whatever the hell it was. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and chop this off. I don't have all day. And I do have another stream to get to. So here's what's going to happen. First, I'm going to chop off the local recording. So for those of you watching on YouTube,